Okay, welcome to the Sean Willers podcast. Today, I want to talk about my cocaine addiction, what life is really like when you are struggling with a cocaine addiction, how I got into that addiction, what were the little things that forced me into that, what I tried to get out of my addiction, and what worked, what didn't work, and then how I finally did. I also want to talk about some stories that maybe you might relate to a little bit, and that might help you to start the process. So a little bit about my background for those who maybe don't know. I'm ex-military, ex-professional DJ, and ex-PT on the floor. Now run my own online fitness business for individuals who are looking to make that transformative change through sobriety, body transformation, and mindset. It's called Willers Fitness. And let's just start from the beginning. Growing up for me was hard. I was not a very well-behaved child at all. My mum had 4 kids, single parent. My dad walked out very early on. Started drinking at 14. Didn't go into school, so I didn't do one day in year 11, didn't get any GCSEs. My mum was going through her own problems as well. She was an alcoholic, and I got kicked out of the house, and I moved into a hostel, got kicked out of the hostel, and then was homeless. So I've actually slept on the streets at 15 years old. Didn't do any of school. I was doing a work placement, and then didn't finish that. So 16 years old life wasn't looking good for me at all. Fortunately, my granddad, who lived in Wolverhampton, very close to that man, he took me in, and my journey started a little bit. I found fitness, which was a huge catalyst for me back when I was around 17, 18. And then when I was 20, I decided to join the military. I joined the RAF regiment, spent 4 years there. Did Afghanistan in 2010, which was a huge eye-opener for myself. And then after the military, I went back into fitness, and then randomly started DJing with my younger brother, Liam, who also works for me as head coach at Willers Fitness. He's had his insane transformation. Like, it's almost unreal. But he DJ'd with me, and that led me into the party lifestyle. So before then, I was drinking. I was using cocaine for sure. I'd never been a good drunk. I was never good with alcohol. It was almost like a ticking time bomb. You never knew what was going to happen. I had so many problems when I was younger with fighting through alcohol. And when I started to DJ, that opened me up to just countless parties, basically. It really did. So the addiction years, let's call it. I think when I was about 24, left the military, started partying a lot at the weekends, especially when I found music. I was fighting a lot, so fights were happening every weekend, especially with when cocaine was getting involved. I was going out in Southend I was living in. I was working in the week, hitting it hard at the weekend, and getting into fights pretty much every weekend. Then when I found music, we started DJing, and then drugs become much more involved for staying up. So I think when I was using them before, it was more just, Larry with the lads going out, getting a couple of bags, hit a few bars, hit a club, get in a fight, go home. That would be the end of it. When I started DJing, especially when I very first started, we was using cocaine to stay up. That would fuel the party for 2 days, basically. And it became a part of my routine. We got a lucky break very early on in my career and started working at Egg in King's Cross. And we started playing every weekend, once a weekend, twice a weekend. And it got to the point where we was playing Friday, Saturday, and then we'd have like a midweek gig as well. So I would end up getting on it on a Wednesday, and then rolling through till Thursday. 1 day rest, Friday, Saturday, Sunday into Monday, 1 day rest, and repeating that. And we repeated that for a couple of years. And at the time, I didn't really see a problem with it because I was building my DJ career. You know, that's the gigs and the parties come part and parcel of that. Very early on, there was issues starting to form. I'd been given a job, me and my brother, at Egg in the office, and we was working there a couple of times a week, and it got to points where I just wouldn't even turn up. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it, but how disrespectful. You know, what sort of an individual does that, doesn't even turn up to their work? Like, that's clearly a problem. And I know some of you listening here have probably missed days from work. If that's the case, you've got a problem with drinking drugs. There's no two ways about it. Even if it's just on the weekend, if you're turning up, you know, for work, not giving it your 100%, or not turning up for work, then you've got a problem. Now, for me, this was happening then for a couple of years. No real big problems at the moment, but there was signs starting to show like this. I think the first biggest impact that I realised that I was dependent on cocaine was when I had my first gig without it. We were playing in Romania, and we got to the gig, as always, you know, where's the packet? That's the question that I always asked. And there wasn't any, but I'd already started heavily drinking, and that did not go well at all, because the fact that I'd been heavily drinking, obviously the cocaine for me usually would balance it out and help me carry on and on and on, but that wasn't the case at that time. And by the time I got to play, I was absolutely wrecked. I was playing the same song over and over again. This is can't remember the night, the club now, but it's, you know, pretty well-known one in Romania. It was maybe 500-600 people getting paid good money for this as well. And I was playing the same song over again. Me and my brother started to argue. The crowd started to boo. It was just so embarrassing. And rather than take responsibility for it as well, I just blamed my brother. They ended up kicking us off the decks, sending us home. And that was the first real big point where I realised, wow, I'm so dependent on cocaine, because if I'd had it, that probably wouldn't have happened. But then if I need cocaine every time I play or have a drink, then clearly there is a problem there. So, you know, at this point I was trapped in a cycle, using all the time. Clearly I needed cocaine every time I drunk, and there was problems starting to show. And these got worse. You know, the binges got bigger, and then we moved to Berlin. Can't remember the year, but I'd been in London for 4 years at this point at Egg. Like I said, partying every single weekend. I don't think I had a weekend off for 4 years there. And by that point, it was 3-4 times a week. Moving to Berlin, don't know if anyone has been to Berlin, but if you move to Berlin with a drug problem, it's only going to go one way. It's not known for, let's say, helping you with that. If anything, it escalated it. Now, that's not to blame the city, but my advice to anyone is, if you're going to move to Berlin, especially back in the day, don't move there with a cocaine problem or any drug problem. And it did. It got worse. And so did my disrespect and my total disregard for the opportunities that I'd been given got worse and worse as well. So this time we'd been taken on by Watergate agency. We were playing at the club, and I've talked about this many times, but I was just partying at this point. Didn't care for anything else. I'd go to the club, just get absolutely wrecked, or, you know, we'd been given opportunities to work in studios, and I'd just turn up wrecked. I'd just turn up off my head, or not slept, or miss these events. And this kept happening. And, you know, I always think, why was I doing that? Was it to sort of avoid my feelings? But I think it was just, I was stuck in a cycle and I didn't see a way out of it. I really didn't. You know, at this point I was completely dependent on using drugs to help me in every area. And my life was becoming a mess. The 1 year we got kicked off the Watergate agency, lost a lot of respect in the industry, went on to new agencies, got kicked off of there. And it started to not only affect my career, but also it started to affect every other area of my life. My health. I lost control of my relationships. My money was just all getting spent on it. And when I say everything, I mean everything. And we weren't badly paid neither as DJs. I was thinking back when I was going to do this podcast of like a few times where I really thought, okay, wow, now I've got a problem. And there's a couple that come into my mind. First one was for me when I lost my phone. I lost my phone on a night out. I was completely wrecked as always, probably after a gig. And I had, I think, around 160 euros left to my name because at the time I was living paycheck to paycheck, so gig to gig. And we were playing most weekends, pretty much every weekend. I would get that money, spend it, and then wait for the next one. And at this situation, I'd lost my phone. I had about 150 euros. Rather than going out and buying a new phone, I wanted to get on it again. I wanted to take cocaine. And I knew a friend was having a party, so I messaged him, and he's like, yeah, come over. So I'd gone to a party, 150 euros to my name, no phone, because I'd had to message him on Instagram. He was like, yeah, come over. I went over. It was packed. Loads of girls there, incredible party. This guy was known for doing parties in Berlin. And instead of me wanting to stay there, what I did is I just said, I need to get some gear. He's like, great, I'll ring the guy, the Albanian at the time. And he come. And what did I do? 3 for 100, took that, and then just left. And I went out on my own to a studio that I had. I just sat there to make music. But all I did is I just took cocaine on my own. So rather than spending that money back onto a phone that I needed, rather than staying at a party with everyone else, what I did is I took the cocaine and I went to just do it on my own. And I remember spending about 3 days in the studio then. I spent all my money because the rest went on drink. Woke up, 3 days after it, and I was just like, what am I doing? I'm just sitting on my own doing cocaine, not socializing, wasting all my money. But a couple of days went by and I forgot about it and I was back in that same cycle. At this point, like I said, it was affecting other areas of my life, and a big one for me was finding apartments. It's always quite difficult in Berlin. It's renowned for it. But because I didn't have any money to put up front, I was living in a lot of house shares. And I remember coming back one time from, again, another session, probably in the studio on my own or after a gig. And I just got back in my room and I was drinking, I was sniffing, just listening to music, doing nothing really. And I'd run out of alcohol. And what I did is I had no money. So I went into the kitchen and took alcohol that wasn't mine from one of the guys that, that I was in this house share with. So after a day I was still up, he come barging in the room, not happy, like, where's my alcohol gone? And we had a little confrontation anyway. He went, and then I fell asleep, thought nothing of it. Went out, come back next day, and, he's like, look, you've got to move out. And he said something to me, and I think it took me quite a while for it to really resonate, but he said, you're a drunk. Obviously, I didn't know I was sniffing all the time as well, but that's what he said. He called me. He was like, you're just a drunk. And I was like, wow, that's how other people see me, as, as just a drunk, basically. Not as a DJ or, a nice guy. They see me as a drunk. And at the time, it hit home. I had to move out, nowhere to go. I was sleeping in the studio now at this point, and that hit home. But again, a few days had passed and nothing would change. Absolutely nothing would change. So at this point, my career was suffering. Didn't think anything of it. It was affecting my relationships, and it was affecting my, my home life, if you could call it that, and also my money, all being affected here. The reason why I wanted to share a couple of them is because if you can relate to certain things that are happening here with my own story, then it is a good time to have a look at your situation and start to make the changes, because it only gets worse and these situations get bigger. You your life becomes more of a mess. There's only a certain amount of time where people will stick around at the end of the day, and I lost more and more and more. Now, before I go to the breaking point for me, I wanted to talk about some of the things that I tried when I realised that I had a problem. Now, at the time, I tried AA and NA hundreds of times. I must have tried so countless times. And I know AA and CA and NA work for so many people. They also don't work for a lot of people. For me, was one of them. I don't really know why. Maybe at the time it's just because I just didn't want it. I think I was just going through the motions of turning up to these meetings just because people were telling me, look, you probably want to sort something out here. You want to try. And that's really all I knew. Another thing that I didn't like about it was the fact that I had to just call myself an alcoholic or an addict for the rest of my days. And that didn't sit with me because I hadn't always been an addict. There'd been a time in my life where I wasn't addicted or wasn't an alcoholic. I mean, to be fair, I've always had a problem with alcohol, but not an alcoholic to that degree. I mean, it depends how you look at it. How do you depict what an alcoholic is? What is an addict at the end of the day? Anyway, I tried that, didn't work. And my ex at the time, bless her, she tried so many things, but I was an absolute arsehole. She helped me get therapy through the RAF Benevolent Fund because I had no money for it. And they give me, I don't know how many hours, I think maybe like 25 hours of therapy. Again, didn't work for me. I think just talking about my past and, trying to pass that blame onto what happened when I was a kid or my time in Afghanistan or this, that, and the other didn't sit with me. Maybe I just didn't really want it at the time. But anyway, these attempts I tried, and I think the real thing for me was when I found fitness again. That was huge. When lockdowns happened, that helped me break the cycle. And I think breaking the cycle is key. It's absolute key because that's what I was trapped in this cycle for years. It was like going out, partying. There was the start of it. And then it was at my work. And then it was just any occasion that I had, I'd just be sniffing on my own. And that's because I was trapped in a cycle and I felt I needed it for anything, to have fun, to make music, to socialize with people. And that ended up just being me on my own. So I tried therapy, I tried AA, I tried CA, these didn't work. And when COVID happened, when lockdowns happened, that helped me break the cycle. And I was able to start building on my fitness, building on my discipline. I talk about this a lot. Fasting was huge for me. Fitness was huge for me. Fasting because it helped me to take control of the situation. Every day I was in control. I was building discipline. Fitness because it made me feel. My health had suffered quite a lot as well. I had really bad acid reflux from all the alcohol and the lack of food. I'd also put on a lot of weight, which was weird because I never remember eating anything. I actually don't remember ever going shopping, especially in Berlin. I never remember what I bought from the supermarket. I never remember what I ate for breakfast. And but because of all the alcohol and the lack of movement, I'd started to put on a lot of weight. So when I started to run again, that really helped my discipline, helped me feel, and it also helped bring my weight back down. These were two huge parts, but still I was trapped in that cycle of being in the music industry. One thing I always say to everyone is that sometimes you just have to let go of things that are holding you back from being who you really want to be. If there's certain people or places that you always do cocaine with, then you need to let them go. It doesn't matter how hard it is for you, how long you've been stuck in that cycle, you've got to let them go. And for me, my breaking point was a near fatal overdose, July 2021. I'd had a break from gigs. I'd started working on myself. I was looking better. I was feeling better. I was still using, but not as much. Started working as well, which really helped because I was in a bit of a routine. I went back, first gig back, We had a big year planned in 2021. We have 10 shows lined up, tour of Australia, tour of New Zealand. Went back, first gig back, going to do it sober. And I didn't. I had one drink, led to two. The next thing I know, I woke up in hospital, had a big gash here in my head. I was, very aggressive. I was very emotional. Apparently the police had brought me in. I was just lay on the floor and had nearly overdosed on cocaine. For me, that was my breaking point. That was a wake-up call. And I realized that if I carried on doing the same thing, if I carried on in the same career with, that same situation, then nothing was going to change. Didn't matter how long I removed myself out of it, because I'd been in there for 10 years, the best part of doing that same scenario. As soon as I went back into it, I was back into that addict mindset, and I just couldn't do it sober. It's not to say that you can't do it sober, but what I realized is that I didn't really enjoy being in the music industry, and I didn't enjoy the music as much as I thought. What I enjoyed was the party, and the partying was the problem. Because as soon as I went to a party, I'd drink, and I'd use cocaine, and then that would be it. So then I had to make the decision to leave, and I left the industry in 2021 in July. And that was one of the most difficult decisions that I ever had to make, but it ended up being the best decision that I had ever made. Because that was the turning point for me. It really was the turning point. And, there was a lot of work ahead. But after the overdose, I knew it was either I carry on doing what I'm doing or I make the change. I also thought, what the fuck am I doing in my life? I was 33 years old and I was in hospital after a night out. I was like, is this it? Is this, I just couldn't, it hit me. I couldn't live like this anymore. I had to take full responsibility and I had to choose to start over again. And that's one of the hardest things, I think. And it's one of the things that holds so many people back is, we get to that point, especially with drugs and alcohol, we think, what the fuck are we doing? Waking up again, looking for your phone, texting every single female in your phone book at 4 a.m. Spent all your money, you're feeling awful, you have no idea what you've done it, and you think, oh, what the fuck am I doing in my life? But what happens is a couple of days go by and you don't really take responsibility for that. And you don't really make the choice to change. You just start to recover. And before you know it, you're back at it again. And that happened for me so many times, actually. I'd wake up from a weekend, no money in the bank, no idea what I'm doing. Everyone's saying, oh, you were doing this last night, you were doing that, you were acting like an idiot. And I'd, feel sorry for myself for a couple of days, say I'm going to change, maybe go to one AA meeting, and then before you know it, Thursday would come and it'd be back on it and it'd be the same thing. Now, the reason why is because I didn't take responsibility to change. I just kept doing the same thing. There's a great quote from Albert Einstein, which I'm probably going to butcher, but it's almost insane to think that you can keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect anything to change. Because if nothing changes, nothing will change. But to change, you need a why. You need to take responsibility, but you need a why. And just getting sober isn't enough. Saying that you need to get sober is not enough. Saying I need to stop doing cocaine and need to stop drinking was not enough. I needed a why. I needed, why do I want to stop drinking? And this is another thing that we talk about quite a lot in Willer's Fitness. And I think it's something that if you are struggling to break that cycle and you keep falling back into old habits, then what you need to look at is not that you want to go sober, but what will going sober bring you? Because I know for me, the goal isn't to stay sober. But what I do know is every single thing that I want to achieve in my life is only possible if I stay sober. That's it. So this was the turning point for me. I knew that I couldn't keep doing the same thing. I couldn't be in the industry anymore. I had to do the work, I had to take full responsibility. I had to remove myself from that. And I had a long, hard road ahead. Rebuilding your life at 33, at the time it seemed like an impossible task, but it isn't. You can do it at any age. How did I do that? Firstly, I got back into fitness. I built a daily routine. I had to build some structure, especially around the weekends, especially around my triggers. Understanding your triggers is huge, but once you understand them, how do you deal with them? How do you overcome them? I think for me, my biggest triggers was I felt I needed it for confidence in any social situation. So if I went to any social event, I needed to have at least 2 drinks. 2 drinks for me meant 1 gram of cocaine, which meant a 3-day bender. So I needed confidence. I also knew that I thrive on routine. And that's one thing that I didn't have for years. I went from the military, super disciplined, super routine, to a life in the music industry with no daily routine at all. So I had to rebuild my daily routine. There was confidence, routine, and I think feeling as well. I didn't feel anything for years. I just felt numb. I just felt I was just round in this loop, so I needed to feel. And that's a few things that fitness will give you. It will give you feeling, it will give you confidence, and it will give you routine. When I first started, running was huge for me. It still is a massive part of my life. And that was great because it was free to start with. I didn't have much money. At this point, I was 2021. I moved back from Berlin to London, but I didn't really have much money. And running was a huge one. Helped me build a little routine into that. Getting up in the morning, going out running. And also in that routine was just simple things. Focusing on eating whole foods over processed food would make me feel better, make me look better as well, which would help me with my confidence. Fasting was a huge one. I fast every day. I'm still fasting now. Time's at 20 to 1. I'm maybe 16 hours into the fast. And fasting was an absolute huge one for me because that gave me control. One thing that I didn't like about therapy and AA and NA is it took responsibility away from me and my actions. At the end of the day, I knew if I had 2 drinks, I would do cocaine. So I needed to take responsibility over that action. I needed to not put myself in a situation where I would drink because I knew if I did, I'd use cocaine. That's me taking responsibility. Not me saying I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic. It's because I was homeless when I was 15. It's got nothing to do with that. It's because I was putting myself in a situation where I would drink. I would call the dealer. No one else, me. That's me taking responsibility. Now, I knew to take responsibility back, I needed discipline. I needed self-control. Fasting is a great tool for that because it's something you do every single day. Something that is completely in your control. You can do it anywhere in the world, anytime. You just need to make sure that you're taking it, being accountable for it. And for me, I used an app called Fastic. Love this app. Just because it meant that every single day I would have to start and stop that fast. And every single day, that's me taking responsibility for an action. And as time grew over and over, I realized actually I am in control of the decisions that I make. I know now if I go and have 2 drinks down the pub, I'm going to get in a packet somehow. I'm going to talk about my last relapse, actually, and the extent I went to get cocaine was absolutely insane. But I know that's what would happen. So I need to, be disciplined enough to not do that in the first place. I hear so many people say, "Oh, I can't break the cycle," but then, okay, when are you getting on it? Well, every Friday when I have 2 drinks down the pub with my mates. Stop going out at the end of the day. Just stop going out. Sit in. I sat in for a long time bored on a Friday and Saturday night on my own or with my brother or with my now wife. Doing nothing, just chilling out, watching a film, not going out and partying because I knew if I went out, I would always end up getting on it and it just wasn't worth it for me because that is not the life that I wanted to live anymore. And you have to take a long, hard look at the things that are causing you to drink and do drugs because if it's an outside, if it's something outside, then stop it at the end of the day. And if you're doing it at home on your own, which again, I've done that as well, then you need to take responsibility for that action because it's you calling it in. So Rebuilding my life was hard, but I got back into fitness. I built that daily routine. I started fasting, started taking responsibility for my actions. I built discipline, and I did it over and over again. I changed how I ate. I changed the people that I spent time with. I changed how I lived my life, and I focused on my health. It was a big one for me. Focused on how I look, how I feel, how my energy levels are. Huge. I found ways to deal with craving and triggers as well. Like I said, removed myself from a lot of my friendship group. Just stop spending time with them. Stop putting myself in situations where I knew I would drink. Understood what my triggers were and worked on them for a long time. I also got support from family members. Now, my family have always been there for me. We are very close. My wife has always been there with me since we met. But there comes a time where people will get sick and tired of you saying the same thing. For years, I said, I'm going to change, but took no action. Once I started to take action, my family could see that, and they were able to support me in a way that didn't drag them down as well. Because remember, everyone else is living their own life. Something to think about. So I got support from my family, had mentors. This is a huge one. People that I looked up to, people who are sober, people who've been through what I'd already done, people who understood me. Not just a therapist who's, 60 years old, who's never done a line in his life. I needed to speak to people that have been through this, but also not people who are calling themselves addict and just talking about gear all the time. I needed to see people doing great, amazing things. I started to spend my time with people who inspired me to be a better individual, because if you spend time with people who are dragging you down and always getting on it and talking about drugs and just not really doing anything in your life, honestly, where do you think you're going to be? What do you think you're going to be doing? Huge one was for me. Liam, my brother, he has been there with me since the start. I owe that guy my life. And at the same time, he went through an incredible transformation. My wife, Mary, she stopped by me from them days in Berlin when I was literally on my arse and helped me in ways that I couldn't, could never imagine. But that was huge. Lastly, most important is I found my why. I said this just earlier. Saying you want to get sober, saying you want to stop taking drugs and drinking is not enough, because most of us have tried that over and over again. I did. Oh, I'm not going to drink anymore. I'm not going to take cocaine anymore. 2 days later, I'd forget about it. You need to find your why. Why do you not want to do that? For me, it's for my health, for my family, for my business. And now, also for Willer's Fitness, because I want to inspire other people to make the changes that I have, to live their best life. So you need to find a why. So when you think about going sober, don't just say you want to go sober or how many days you've gone sober. It's why you want to go sober and what are you going to achieve from staying sober. Like I said, for me, I don't think about how many days I've gone sober, as opposed to I know that everything that I want to achieve has to happen with me being sober. So you find your why. I rebuilt my confidence and strength over time. And time is another one, guys. If you've been getting on it, I was getting on it religiously for 8 years. Every single weekend. Got to a point in Berlin I was doing it. The only time I wasn't doing it is when I'd have a day recovery. For 2 years that was solid. It's not going to take a few months. I'm 4 years into this journey, and I say this all the time, but it's taken me 4 years to get 1 year sober. And let's talk about what happened with my last relapse nearly 500 days ago. In fact, it'll be over 500 days when this goes out. But I got almost complacent, thinking that I could put myself in a situation where I could have a few drinks and everything could be all right. For a long time, I tried to test the waters. I didn't really want to let go fully. I didn't think that I would ever be able to go out to see DJs that I liked or interact in social occasions or be creative or, be myself without drugs and alcohol. And I tested that water for a long time. I'd have long periods off, 3-4 months, wouldn't even count. And then I'd go out and have a night out, get on it. Everything could be fine. No problems would happen. and I think, well, this is it. I'm cured. That's it. I can use cocaine and I can drink and I can have a good time every now and again. It's fine. But what happened is that I tested that. I went out for a couple of drinks. I went to the boxing, had a couple of drinks, and my brain just switched. And I spent the whole time of the boxing messaging every single person that I had in my phone book to find cocaine till I found someone. As soon as I did, I left the boxing, didn't even watch the main fight, went, got the cocaine, sat in a hotel room, sniffed in at 8 on my own. For what as well? Went back to my old creepy ways. Dragged me right back down. Two things I realised there. One, I can't drink ever again and I can't do cocaine ever again because it isn't worth the risk. And two, I have to take responsibility for this. I can't be feeling sorry for myself like, oh, I didn't mean to do it. I did because I had a drink and it took me back. So what I did is I took responsibility for that. I let everyone know that it happened. Took full responsibility. There was a minute I said to myself, I'm never going to do this again, but there was a bit of gear left and I went to put it away and I was like, what the fuck am I doing? This is not me anyway. And I flushed it down the toilet. And I'll never, ever drink and do drugs again. But it's sometimes these relapses has to happen because now it's never been so easy for me to stay sober now. It's just not a part of my life. But I needed that. I needed that to remind me. I needed it to, one, remind me how far I've come the 3 years before that. And two, I needed it to remind me that everything that I had been doing is the right path and drugs and alcohol are only going to hold me back and I'm never going to be able to reach my full potential without it. So that was it. And relapses can happen, whatever you want to call them, setbacks. It's all part of your journey. Some people will just be able to stop it and never do it again. Some people have hundreds of relapses. I had countless times where I fell back into that same scenario. It happens. It's how you deal with it. And what I didn't do is what a lot of people do, feel sorry for themselves, say this isn't going to work, oh, it's not for me, and then just go back into that old habit, which I could have easily done. But what I did, like I said, took responsibility for it. Next day, just got right back on my path, even more confident that it was never going to happen again. I learned from it. I really did take a lot of time to learn from my mistakes from that to make sure that it will never happen again. And I also realized that, again, everything that I want will come with sobriety. Everything that I don't want, my old life is there waiting if I want it. It's there with the cocaine, it's there with the alcohol, but I don't want that anymore. I focused on my why. But that's because I'd spent the past 3 years every day working on that. Again, I wasn't 3 years sober, a lot of ups and downs, but I'd taken time to learn that. And few things that if you're just on your journey, setbacks will happen. Take responsibility for them, learn from them, don't feel sorry for yourself. Just carry on taking action, moving forward. And it's going to take time. If you're 40 years old and you've been getting on it for 20 years, don't expect in 2 or 3 months that anything is going to change. You might start to feel better for sure, but if you want lifelong changes, you need to be thinking in years at the end of the day. Years. I'm now somewhere 4 years ago that I never thought was possible. 4 years ago, I was a cocaine addict with no money, had one small bag of clothes to my name. Most of them clothes were secondhand shops as well, because that's where I was shopping at the time because I had no money. I never thought I'd be where I am right now. But it's taken 4 years of work, but it was worth it because now the next 4 years are going to be even better. So if you're in your own journey, you've had setbacks, it's just been a couple of months, don't give up, guys. Don't think 2 months is enough. It's going to take time, but it's worth it. Trust me. So that was, quite a brief thing about how I rebuilt my life. This year's been the best year ever. Next year's going to be even better. But founding Willis Fitness for me has been a huge why. I turn my struggles into a way to help other people. I think in the music industry especially, there is no help for anyone. There's some of the biggest DJs in the world just talking about the sesh all the time. And personally, I think it's a bit grim. 30, 40-year-old guys talking about the sesh like it's something to be glamorized. Like, I know people who are struggling with that now. Hundreds of people. I've had friends die. Ended my career, nearly ended my life. It's not anything to laugh about. So that's when I originally started to help people in the industry go through. Now I've seen that I want to help people all around the world who are struggling with drink and drug, abuse, who have tried everything else but want to live the best life. I created a really supportive community for people who want to change, and we do that. The idea is we transform your life through sobriety, through body transformation and fitness, and through mastering your mind as well, because the mind is the biggest thing. But it's also the reason why a lot of us get on it, not because we're physically addicted. We're mentally addicted to drugs and alcohol. We're mentally stuck in these ways. You need to mentally get out of them. And founding Willis Fitness has been huge for me. We've helped people now in 17 different countries, some of the biggest DJs in the world. We've worked with some incredible individuals. We have guys who are owning 2 or 3 companies. We've got some incredible CrossFit athletes. We've got people working in the city, all focusing on that main goal of being the best version of themselves. But they know the one thing that's holding them back is drugs and alcohol, usually cocaine, and their mind. So that's what we focus on. And, with sobriety, with hard work, with personal growth, you can live the best life you want as long as you give it time and you turn up every single day. And that's been a huge why for me, being able to help these individuals. It's helped my own personal growth, seeing my brother grow, my family members, find inspiration for it. And we've helped over 300 people so far. And I've spoke to hundreds of other people as well going through that. And if you are looking to make a change, and you are stuck, this is coming from someone who's been homeless, who used to sniff cocaine on his own, who has ended up in hospital from it, someone who lost a career from it, someone who, has nearly died from it. It affected my health. I wasted all my money in it. I was rock bottom, guys. And now, personally, I'm living my best life. I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm earning more money than I ever have. I've helped hundreds of people. I'm inspiring hundreds of people. I'm fucking learning Japanese, guys. 3 or 4 years ago, none of this would have been possible. So here's my advice. Firstly, take responsibility for your actions. Don't let other people, play it down. Oh, it's okay. It's because you've had a hard upbringing, or, it's because you're an addict. No, it's not. It's you. You have to take responsibility for your actions. If you're sniffing cocaine every single weekend, waking up on a Sunday, you've been messaging girls when you're married, your kids are, looking at you and you're thinking, what am I doing? Like, is this me? Yeah, you have to take responsibility for that. You're putting yourself in that situation. If you are, running a business, let's say, and using cocaine to try and get by, or ketamine as well on a daily basis, you need to take responsibility because you're the one calling that dealer at the end of the day. You're the one doing it. So take responsibility. That is the first step. Don't pass the blame. Don't pass the blame on you're an addict. Don't pass the blame, on your childhood. Don't pass the blame onto your ADHD, because I also have ADHD, and I try and use that to my advantage these days. Now, take responsibility, okay? Now, just before we go into that any further, I do want to say try everything as well. Look, if you haven't tried AA, NA, therapy, try all them things first, okay? If that doesn't work, then take responsibility. It's the first step. And to be honest, I think seeking out help is actually taking responsibility. Absolutely. But don't pass that blame onto anything else. Addiction, it doesn't have to be the end of your story. Alcohol doesn't have to be the end of your story. Cocaine, ketamine doesn't have to be the end of your story. It definitely wasn't for mine. It's been just part of my journey. But I feel that if you put too much emphasis on the problem, then you're not going to be able to see the outcome. It will be the end of your story. If you're always going back and saying that it's because of this, or I have to do it, or I can't see a way out, then it will be the end of your story. But if you take responsibility and then start the small changes, over time, they will add up. Over time, you'll start to be able to see that it is possible to get out of that. But, if you are struggling, don't suffer in silence. You've got to reach out for help. You need to, try everything at the end of the day. I tried everything. When therapy didn't work, when AA didn't work, when CA didn't work for me, I realized that I had to take responsibility. And that is when I built the Take Back Control program, which is what we have at Willis Fitness, which has helped hundreds of people now, 300, overcome their drug and alcohol problems, get in incredible shape, build such a strong mindset through discipline, and start to reach their full potential. So a little shorter one today. Just wanted to talk about what life is really like, as a cocaine addict, how I got there, what I tried, how I overcome it, and what I'm doing now. So guys, reach out, drop me a message on Instagram at Willis Fitness if you want to speak a little further. Remember, it doesn't have to be the end of your story. Thank you for listening. This was the 6th episode of the Sean Willis podcast. 2025, let's make it a great year. Cheers.